The troops moved in quietly but firmly, pressing deeper into the heart of the Timbuktu Triangle, one of the most feared terrorist enclaves in Borno State. This time, they were not just chasing shadows or responding to attacks. They were advancing with purpose, clearing ground, dismantling structures of terror, and uncovering painful evidence of what had gone on in the dark for years. As Operation Hadin Kai forces sustained their offensive in the area, 3 detention facilities used by Boko Haram terrorists were uncovered and dismantled at the notorious Guraba terrorist camp. Each facility had 3 separate cells, small, crude holding spaces that silently told stories of fear, suffering, and captivity.
Sources familiar with the operation told Zagazola Makama that the discovery was made during ongoing clearance operations as troops dominated key locations across the Timbuktu Triangle. These areas included Tergejeri, Chiralia, and the Ajigin and Abirma general axis, places that had long remained unsafe for civilians and security forces alike. Now, at this point, it is important to understand what the Timbuktu Triangle represents. This vast, rugged stretch of land has served as a hideout, training ground, and operational base for terrorists. Thick bushes, winding tracks, and isolated terrain have made it difficult to penetrate. For years, communities around it lived with fear, knowing that just beyond their villages lay camps where hostages were kept and attacks planned.
As troops pushed forward, they encountered resistance almost immediately. Terrorist elements, sensing the tightening noose, attempted to flee, but they did not escape easily. During the operations, troops made contact with fleeing terrorist elements and engaged them with high volumes of fire, resulting in the neutralization of several terrorists, a military source said. On the ground, the atmosphere was tense. The sound of gunfire echoed through the bushes. Dust rose from the dry earth as armored vehicles advanced cautiously. Soldiers moved in coordinated formations, watching every corner, every path, every suspicious movement. For them, this was not just another mission. It was about denying terrorists the space to regroup and terrorize innocent people.
But here's where the story gets interesting. On January 20, while troops were consolidating at a harbor area about 6 kilometers north of Chiralia, danger struck in a sudden and terrifying way. 2 vehicle-borne improvised explosive devices, VBIEDs, were detected moving toward the troops' defensive position. VBIEDs are among the deadliest weapons used by insurgents. Packed with explosives and driven at high speed, they are designed to cause maximum damage within seconds. In those moments, there is little time to think, only to act. Through vigilance and swift action, 1 VBIED was successfully neutralized, the source explained. That moment likely saved many lives. Soldiers acted quickly, applying training and teamwork under intense pressure. But the danger was not over. The second, however, breached the defensive position and affected some logistics platforms, the source added.
The explosion shattered the tense calm of the bush. Smoke filled the air. Equipment was damaged, and most painfully, lives were lost. Some soldiers and members of the Civilian Joint Task Force, CJTF, local volunteers who risk everything to support security operations, paid the ultimate price. Others sustained injuries. These soldiers and CJTF members are not just uniforms or statistics. They are sons, fathers, brothers, friends. Many left their families behind, knowing the risks, driven by duty and the hope that one day the Northeast will know peace. The CJTF members, in particular, are civilians who chose to stand up against terror in their own communities. In the aftermath of the attack, there was no panic. There was response. The wounded were promptly evacuated by Nigerian Army Aviation helicopters to 7th Division Medical Services and Hospital, the source said.
From above, helicopters cut through the sky, their rotors thundering as they landed and took off in quick succession. Injured personnel were carefully loaded, medics working under pressure to stabilize them. Every second mattered. To prevent further attacks and ensure the safety of the evacuation, Nigerian Air Force platforms from the air component provided continuous overwatch.
They worked in synergy with other Army air assets, scanning the area, deterring terrorist movement, and neutralizing threats. On the ground, troops regrouped. Despite the loss and damage, morale remained strong. The operation did not stop. Then came another grim discovery. As troops continued their advance and searched cleared areas, they uncovered mass graves within the Timbuktu Triangle. Inside were about 20 bodies of terrorists killed during previous encounters and secretly buried by their fellow fighters.
The sight was disturbing but revealing. These graves told a story that contradicted the loud propaganda often pushed by insurgents, claims of invincibility, strength, and constant victory. The reality, buried beneath the soil, showed heavy losses suffered by the group. The discovery exposes the scale of terrorist casualties and further discredits the propaganda of the insurgents, the source noted. For communities that have lived under the shadow of Boko Haram, this revelation carries mixed emotions. There is relief in knowing that terrorists are being pushed back, but there is also pain, remembering the years of violence, displacement, and loss. Residents around the Timbuktu Triangle have long heard distant gunshots, explosions, and the roar of military aircraft. Many have lost homes, farms, and loved ones. Some were forced to flee. Others stayed behind, trapped between fear of terrorists and the dangers of conflict.
Following the recent operations, there is cautious hope. Community members who spoke quietly among themselves expressed gratitude to the troops while praying for the fallen soldiers and CJTF members. For them, every cleared camp means one less place for terrorists to plan attacks. Every dismantled detention cell represents lives that may have been saved from captivity or death. Security experts say the latest gains are significant. Dominating areas like Tergejeri, Chiralia, and Ajigin, Abirma disrupt terrorist supply routes and movement corridors. It limits their ability to regroup and launch coordinated attacks. However, the use of VBIEDs shows that the insurgents remain dangerous and desperate.
This brings us to the bigger issue. The fight against terrorism in the Northeast is not just a military battle. It is also a social and community challenge. Terrorists thrive in isolated areas, exploit poverty, and rely on fear and misinformation. They hide among difficult terrain and sometimes depend on local support, whether forced or manipulated. This is why cooperation between communities and security agencies remains critical. Residents are urged to remain vigilant, report suspicious movements, abandon vehicles, or unfamiliar faces. Early information can save lives. Community leaders, youths, and vigilante groups all have roles to play in protecting their environment. At the same time, there is a need for sustained support for the families of fallen soldiers and CJTF members. Their sacrifices must not be forgotten. Proper care for the wounded and psychological support for troops returning from the front lines are also essential.
The military has assured that the general security situation across the theater remains stable, adding that troops' morale and fighting efficiency were high. Operations continue with sustained pressure on fleeing terrorist elements, as troops remained resolute in their commitment to protect civilians, dismantle terrorist networks, and restore lasting peace and security in the Northeast, the source added. As the dust settles in the Timbuktu Triangle, the story is far from over. Bush paths once controlled by terrorists are slowly being reclaimed. Camps are being destroyed. Detention cells are being dismantled. But the cost has been high. The lesson for everyone is clear. Security is a shared responsibility. Peace will not come overnight, but with persistence, cooperation, and trust between civilians and security forces, the tide can continue to turn. For now, the soldiers remain on the move, alert and determined. The communities watch closely, hopeful but cautious, and the nation is reminded once again of the bravery, sacrifice, and resilience required to confront terror and rebuild peace, one cleared camp, one rescued life, and one hard-fought victory at a time.